Hello and welcome to Nerdarchy. For nerds by nerds. I'm Nerdarchy Steve, and tonight I'm joined by this nerd.
Nerdarchy Ted, how are you doing this fine and lovely evening, sir, Dave?
I am doing well. A little sleepy, but other than that, fine.
Oh, I definitely understand you there. I've had my own mini game to deal with today, so uh, it is I have to say it is quite an experience to try and goat wrangle the broken finger.
Yeah, that does not sound like a lot of fun. You're gonna have to explain to people what the hell you're talking about when you say goat wrangling.
All
But
right, so
before you get into that, real quick, sponsor of tonight's live chat is Easy Roller Dice. Whether it's your first set of dice or 1 millionth set of dice, Easy Roller Dice for your dice rolling needs. Hey, and down in the description, you can find a one-time coupon code for like 25% off. So if you haven't taken advantage of that, please do and let them know we sent you. They've been friends of the channel for a long time. Now we're going to talk about. So we're supposed to be talking about games within games tonight, but first off, we're going to start with Ted's goat wrangling.
all right, so I will tie this in. Uh, Number one with Dave's goat game. Sorry, Dave's game. Our group is the Grotto Gruffs. So we have a whole goat themed scenario. And, you know, I want to say that it was totally in honor of the fact that we gamed this past weekend that we brought in a herd of goats in my backyard. But it was legitimately, there's a company that they they literally hire out goats, they fence them in, and then they just eat the roughage and clear up overgrown areas. And the one part of my yard was way overgrown. It had been neglected for quite some time. And stuff back there's poison ivy, there's stinging nettles, there's thorns, all of which the goats don't care about. They can eat no problem, but it does quite a number on me. I'm like extra sensitive to some of the stuff that's back there. That's just how it is. So my wife found this company that they bring in goats, they stay there for like 5, 6 days, and they clear it all. I watched a video today of the direct comparison to what it looked like Thursday versus what it looked like today. And holy crap, it is like a barren wasteland, is in comparison to like the thick overgrown jungle that it was less than a week ago. Um,
So you say mowing your lawn is for suckers? You just need a lot of goats.
well, you could totally go that route if you really wanted. Say that because it's not exactly cheap to hire a herd of goats.
Well, also it is a trade-off. You will not have grass or green growy stuff, but you will have lots of goat poop.
You
So
will indeed have lots of goat poop. Dave came to check out the goats yesterday with family in tow. But the game within my goat herding is the fact that this morning I go out to check on the goats, make sure they're all there. And as I'm looking
make
around,
sure they're working, not laying about when they should be eating stuff and making it go away.
that is entirely true. There are some that you really have to like, kind of get a move on. And I go over and there's a fence to, the one side, and I'm like, wait a second, that goat is on the wrong damn side of that fence. Holy crap, there's another one. There's a third. Oh man, this sucks. So I quick run inside, call the goat guy, and normally he's, on track of being there by like 9:30, 10 o'clock in the morning to check on the goats and make sure that they've got everything that they need, this, that, and the other thing. And of course, of all days to not be here on time is the day that not three, but four goats happen to get out. And he's like, well, you can try this, you can try that. But I think the best thing to do is if you can just like grab them, pick them up, and just kind of drop them over the fence, just secure it.
Oh, wait a
Well,
minute. So are you saying the game within the game is called goat hurling? Is that something you
yeah,
were doing?
it was kind of goat catching and goat hurling
Uh,
was the, the game within the game of goat herding. So I had to catch, the goats. And
did you catch them all?
the two littlest ones weren't hard to catch, but I had to catch them a total of 3 times each because I caught them, got them over the fence. what I did to secure the fence wasn't good enough because they broke through that and got right back out. So I secured the fence, what I thought was better and good enough. Caught those two again because they were easy, then proceeded to spend 40 minutes chasing the other two.
Is anybody else in the chat really disappointed that there's not video of Ted chasing these goats all over the place?
Well, I'm sorry. My son was there helping me, and the girls were at work, so there was no one a camera to film us chasing the goat in circles around the pool and around the barn in the next door or the shed in the next door neighbor's yard. But it was a fiasco. It was crazy, and by by the end, I finally caught those two, got them over, resecured the gate, and sure enough, it still wasn't enough because the two little ones did get back out, and I had to catch them again. But again,
So were they found the hole in the fence, or were they climbing over?
they went underneath.
Yeah.
So it was a chain link fence, and there's basically just like the thick aluminum wire that wraps from one link around the bar, and
you had some diggers.
It's literally just one twist.
Yeah.
They saw all of the greenery that was over there, and they just kind of kept pushing with their head until the wire bent or broke, and then just shoved under. Literally, while I'm trying to deal with all of this, the biggest of the goats was like, "Oh, I can get over there too," and he started going under, and his full head was like under. Like I'm like, "Oh my god! If he goes, I'm screwed." Because he's easy to catch. But it was like there's no way I was gonna pick him up and put him over the fence. I literally have to like grab him by his horn and through the neighbor's whole yard around the front.
I just picture you every time you get a goat and throw it back over, another one just comes through. This definitely has like a Little Rascals vibe to it.
So it was exhausting.
All right, Ted, how would you turn this event into a game in your D&D campaign?
So of course, I take everything as inspiration. So I would totally be doing this as like a skill challenge. You have to combine animal handling, athletics, and acrobatics. The acrobatics to kind of like avoid when they decide to, come at you with a headbutt because they don't want to be grabbed. The athletics to like literally manhandle them once you actually do catch. The animal handling to actually control the direction and then eventually catch them.
How was your acrobatics checks? Did you get headbutted?
I did not. I thankfully was able to avoid any of that kind of nonsense, and they don't go heavy on attacking people.
Yeah.
You have to understand, like, if you start running, they're gonna run and they're gonna either get aggressive or defensive, and that's tricky. So it was definitely controlling Teddy's reaction or my son's reaction to all of this.
Your son's a little beanpole too. They would like plow him.
They would absolutely knock him over, and like these are small goats,
Yeah.
But like while I was trying to secure the fence, I was literally watching from like a couple feet away that the one without horns is called Mama, and like she was bigger than the little goats that were there, and she had no fears. Like, nope, I don't want you going after the food that I am. And she would literally raise up on her back hooves, turn that neck, and slam the top of her head into the forehead of the other goat that was there.
Goats are jerks to each other, no joke.
So it was well, and that's what they do. That's how they communicate. And clearly, it's not like the other goat got knocked out or seemed injured. Oh, it's not like something.
Yeah, I don't know if you folks remember Nate the Nerdarchy when he used to be part of Nerdarchy, but for whatever reason, he always equated violence with headbutting. Maybe he's secretly a goat. Maybe Nate doesn't actually exist. It's just a couple goats in a Nate suit. At
Yeah,
first, I just thought that's his version of psionics. Since he
that's
can't really do
possible.
it, he's like, "I'll just beat you with my brain." But now I've decided no, he's actually a goat in an 8 suit.
All right. Well, I mean,
I have
if
a new
that's the
theory.
case, that's the case. But so I had to deal with that with a broken finger. It was hilarious,
Yeah,
painful, tiring. Uh, you know,
it,
the
it
so
sounds like it.
I've got metal pins, sticking in my finger still. Um, and somewhere in the process of chasing after goats, fixing fences, getting goats over the fence, washing my hands, I changing my shirt because I'm literally on my third shirt for the day.
Uh,
It's absolutely crazy.
well, I mean, it's a
If
cool
not four,
Voltron shirt, at least.
it is definitely a cool Voltron shirt. I mean, can't go wrong with Voltron.
So Matthew
Uh,
Leonard says Satar Slavers. I know, right? I don't know why we picked games within games tonight. We should have just did a goat theme, right? Like, because I definitely goats themed, yeah, not themed, but definitely appeared in my first Griffin Gaff campaign because I had a tribe of orcs that raised the Olin guy. They raised giant mountain goats and used them for steeds and milk and made cheese out of them and kind of just like lived in unity with them. And they worshipped goat gods, of course.
well,
Which you,
I get.
which I was gonna say, you guys ended up like, having to become part of the tribe in order to get them to buy stuff from you.
Yep.
And which involved this ritual and this like spirit quest you guys had to go on.
Yeah, some of which people were lucky enough to get goat powers. Sadly, my character was not. Uh, Still saddens me to this day.
Yeah.
Uh,
No evil
but
goat powers for you. And
if
then you and
if
Todd started the propaganda that the goat powers were actually evil goat powers.
I think it was more of the players that started that propaganda more so than the characters. Uh, but I would say that if I were to do something goat themed now, the things associated with the goats would definitely be far more aggressive and jerky towards each other because these things are like, nope, that's my food, and they would literally just, I mean,
Yeah.
do that, like, nope, I'm having this, and they would just full on charge. Doesn't matter whether they're hitting them in the head, the neck, the side, or if the other goat is observant enough to pay attention. Nope, I'll move.
Yeah. I had a client that had a farm and he had goats. And he had one and he told me the one he's like, yeah, he started pawing the ground and then he charged me and it's like I tried to dodge, but you can't dodge a goat. So I don't know if you tried dodging any of the goats or not, but to prove that true or not. But when we think of games within games, I think we usually think of card games or dice games. They come up all the time. I know there's been more than a few times that I've just made games up on the fly because the players had
Yeah.
asked, or I'm like, oh yeah, there's some people over there throwing dice, and gambling. They're like, oh
I
really? And then next thing you know, whatever you plan for the night, forget about it. They just want to gamble now.
the great part about that is you could literally come up with a concept and then just be like, oh, this has to do with associate a skill, and whether you want to you know use sleight of hand, whether you want to use athletics, whether you want to just kind of associate a particular stat for it, because you can have all the things that you just mentioned. You can have drinking games, you can have all of like the physical kind of confrontations, break a rock, arm wrestling, hurl a stone. I mean, good examples.
Humans will make a game out of anything.
Look at all of like the cool Scottish things that they came up with, like caber tossing and that kind of stuff. I think there's a lot of things that could easily transition into a fantasy thing, but
Wait a
like
minute, wait a minute.
you could
Let's
even
get
go a
back to the
step.
caper toss, right?
Sure.
You got two Scottish guys standing around. Like, that's a pretty big log there. Bet I could throw it. Bet you can't. And then he throws it. And he's like, I bet I can throw it further. And that's like how they came up with their games. And there's probably drinking involved.
Well, I mean, it is Scotland after all. I don't mean to go crazy with it, but
Yeah, yeah.
They do have a reputation.
Yeah, but I will say like putting games within your game is a lot of fun, but it can also derail your game because like I said, the players will just want to do that for a good portion of the evening, and also be prepared because at least one of them is going to want to cheat.
Well, I mean, that is part and parcel of what's there. Is I mean, you've got skill deception. Can the game?
Yeah.
Can you a way to kind of get one over? And it might be something as simple as like, oh, well, if you succeed on this, like you've got the win. But if you fail, they know you cheated. Like that be all
I
kinds of
think we
problematic.
I think we got a goat whisperer in the chat.
Nexus.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like the goats that we have, like it's a good half and half. There's a couple of them that are like super friendly, easy to get along with. Like there's one, he honestly follows you around like a puppy dog. He's absolutely fantastic. If you know, if it were a scenario where like we are coded to be able to have goats as pets, and this dude needed to rehome this goat, we would probably take him in a heartbeat because his personality is awesome.
Maybe you could trade one of your kids for that kid.
So a kid for a kid.
Yeah, dude, I
um,
remember being at the Philadelphia Zoo,
uh-huh.
and like they have the petting zoo, and my wife is like, my son was like 3 or 4, and my wife is like, go pet the kid, because there was like goats and stuff, and he goes over to one of the other children that are at the petting zoo and starts petting the kid.
Well, it's a scenario of the ones that are there. Some are cool, some are not. It's just that like I totally when I first saw him, like my first reaction was that's a minotaur. It was
Yeah.
itty tiny that I totally now want to make a
Mini
yes.
tars.
This is going to be totally a ridiculous concept, but I want to mix like minotaur and dwarf.
Uh,
Have these cool like shorter statured minotaurs with these wicked horns and awesome beards, all based off of just this one goat. Uh,
yeah. Why do they have to be dwarf minotaur mix? Why can't they just be miniature minotaurs?
because dwarves are awesome and
Okay.
they've got righteous beards. So like I don't know how the concept gets there. But
uh,
that's now and I'll have to figure it out. It could be some kind of curse that's been involved. Either the Minotaur, have been fighting with the dwarves and they've been cursed to become more dwarf-like, or the dwarves been fighting with the Minotaur and they're cursed to be more Minotaur-like. Uh, so I'm workshopping the idea based off of one of the goats, but he's awesome and was unfortunately given the lame name Patch.
uh,
Nonsense is that, but yeah. So with the games, I'll transition back to the proper topic. This all kind of came up with, if you happen to catch the untraditionally arcane game that I ran on Friday night, we ended with the players in a junkyard getting stuff piled on top of them in a last minute, you know, what do we do to get out of here? They they all quickly cast their spell and summoned their familiar. The next session, we're actually going to play. That game story is going to continue, but as opposed to them playing their individual characters, they are going to play as their familiars using the critical role game of Familiar Problem. So it's a game within a game, a whole nother rule subset, and the characters familiar. So we thought this would be a pretty cool way to like talk about games within games, because it's still one ongoing storyline with two different rule sets.
yeah, I think there's a game called Year Zero too, and there was an article that I shared about taking that because it's like it's a game, but it's kind of an RPG, but it's also about building like a world building game. and it
Right.
talked about like playing the game first and building out your world, your campaign, and then playing D&D in it or whatever TTRPG you wanted to. So that was kind of along those lines as well. Um, and then like I mean, there's always been games within. If you think about it, like we did a full season of a D&D live game that was nothing but us playing a game inside of the game, right? So the world
Sure.
is a modern world, but as if the fantasy world evolved into modern technology, modern times, but then there's a game show where you pretend to be adventurers using the stuff medieval adventurers would have, ish,
Ish.
and delving dungeons for fame and fabulous prizes. Also, you might have better know it as Dungeons and Delving.
Yeah, which we're getting ready to finish up the ah crap, Zoo Mafia tomorrow night.
Christ, it has taken so long to finish this game.
But then we have shortly thereafter we're going to start Robin's game, and then supposedly if math and everything works out, we should be returning to Dungeons and Delving. So if my math corrects, it's probably going to be right about the turn of the new year or just past the turn of the new year.
Yeah.
uh, so
Hopefully we get on back on track. I felt like our seasons before it flowed really good.
mhm.
We barely had a problem with missing sessions, but this last season has seemed a little bit cursed.
Well, there's just been a lot going on. It's summertime. People have traveling issues and what have you. There's been some sickness, so it does suck. And like I know I'm chomping at the bit to see how this all gets resolved. Um, and you know that's just cool.
Yeah. So we've got. It's only fair to mention in the description we do have a product called Taking Chances, and we do add a bunch of new games in there, as well as a way to use more tool proficiencies in your games. And one of the games actually came out of one of the videos we did, and it is basically it's basically like Rock'em Sock'em Robots, but fantasy style. So you each have like a miniature construct that you use to do battle with.
So BattleBots.
It's kind of like BattleBots. Yeah, I guess BattleBots is very much a step up from the Rock'em Sock'em Robots, but still got a fondness for them.
Yeah, I've watched a lot of episodes of BattleBots, so I definitely was like, oh, constructs fighting constructs. Yeah, I'm here for that.
But also like, so gambling halls are definitely a big part of the D&D world, and the players end up there whether they're trying to rob the place, they're looking for information, they're tracking somebody down, or they just want some downtime and they want to relax and kick back and spend some of their hard-earned gold gambling. So it's definitely it makes for a nice kind of like, it can make for a nice beach episode without the beach.
Sure. Well, I mean, the great part about even when you get into gambling is you can get the game within the game within the game, because it's like, all right, inside of D&D, you're sitting here playing a game, but perhaps the game is the distraction because you're looking to actually have the conversation and get some information. So who cares whether you win or lose at the card game, but do you get information while you're talking to the person?
Well, yeah, you could go that route, or as an extra added complication as the DM, like the person you're trying to get information from won't respect you unless you're good at the game you're playing. You like, and that's a way to ingratiate yourself to them, so you can actually use that as like you're in to making the contact. And
Mhm.
whether it's one of your players' characters are really good at that game, or they're good at cheating to appear to be good at whatever the game is, and how will that affect things too? How are
Right.
you going to deal with if someone does get caught cheating? Does that mean someone's instantly going to pull out a knife and try and get stabby?
Yeah, I mean that's the thing to kind of look at is like every territory, every area is going to have different things. Like some people be like, all right, you're a cheater. I'm just not going to play with you anymore, and you move on. Whereas like other games, it's like, all right, dude, this is just you've crossed a line here, and it's so like it's important to kind of establish what kind of things you're looking at.
I
Um,
mean, it came up in Zoo Mafia. I believe Steven and Robin's characters were doing the gambling,
mhm.
and you guys were doing something else because that's how you guys had always operated in that game. And they were
Yep,
doing really good, and then they got caught cheating. So,
yep.
like casino style, they get pulled back into the back room
Oh yeah,
to to have a talk with the boss.
yeah.
Um, so there's a couple questions in the chat. What do you guys think about Warforged experiment models based on available races, nexus? I think we've done stuff like that in the past, but we just treat them as Warforged and aesthetically change the look. Didn't you? Didn't you have like a Warforged that looked like a dragon,
Yeah,
Dragonborn,
yeah,
but it was just a Warforged?
yeah. I just use the Warforged stats, and it's like, all right, well, he just looks
You're like, I
looks.
want to use this mini. I think.
Well, I mean, that's one of the things like you can do, and once you got full access to complete customization of whether you're making something on Hero Forge or whether you're things together, or whether you just be like, what, I'm going to take this Dragonborn mini and I'm going to paint it to look like it's legit metal and it's a construct. You're there for it. So, or I'm there for it. So it's just go for it.
Doesn't the so which book is it from Critical Role that has the rules on mixing races?
It's the new Reborn.
Oh, Tal'Dorei Reborn.
uh,
Okay.
yeah, and it's a little wonky in my opinion. um because it's like, all right, when yeah, mixed ancestry 163. I know this is totally off track, but it's like, oh, you can try and put this together here and that together there.
Well, I mean, D&D players historically have always done that, wanting to mix races. There's a product on the DM's Guild called "If an Orc and an Elf Had a Baby" that does a lot of like the race mixing stuff.
Hmm.
I
This
mean,
is Yeah, out of the book, it says when you build a character of mixed ancestry, keep in mind that some racial traits are more mechanically powerful than others, while some are largely flavorful or narrative focused. As such, focus on swapping a narrative trait for another narrative trait or a combat focused trait for another combat focused trait. Additionally, you must have the game master's permission to use the replacement traits. As with any house rule, you and your game master might want to revisit your unique combination of traits later in the campaign if they feel over or underpowered. So, like, they definitely say you want to be careful with it, but it's a scenario of like it can be grossly power gamed if you've got a GM who's not really aware of what you're doing and they just say, yeah, go ahead.
yeah. I think with Warforged though, I would aesthetically just make the change because they have a really good kit as far as the game goes for races.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I
I
don't,
mean,
I don't think you need to
honest,
add anything to them.
honestly, if you want to play, like, I want to mix these two races together, just pick whichever of the core race you want to use and just say, I'm going to use this, but I look like that.
Uh,
Um, you know, I'm slightly more elven or slightly more orc, but I'm a half elf, half orc, and voila, or what have you. Now we have, since we're getting into half races, we have a dwelf that has been, created, which is a obviously half elf, half dwarf. Um, Steve and I believe put that together, but and he actually played one in my
he
aforementioned.
played one, but I think Doug put it together.
Oh, Doug put it together. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. I would never create such an abomination. It goes against all the dwarfiness.
Yeah, no,
I
I was saying I was saying I thought Steven put it together, not you.
Yeah, no, I know. No, but I think it was Doug. Steven did play the dwarf in your game, though.
Yes. Um, yeah.
I just inherently dislike when players want to like hybrid the races, only because my experience. I think I've just had bad experience with players where they're generally just trying to, figure out how to game the system and get over,
Sure.
as opposed to, you know, they have a cool concept. If you have a cool concept, aesthetically just changing it works fine. Although in 5e,
Right.
I will say you have the custom lineage, so you can say it is whatever it is, but really all you get is a feed out of
Yes. Doug says that he made the dwarf and he's proud of
it. Yeah, like I
he
said,
shared that in our,
I thought it was a Doug Nerder Doug special.
he shared that in our private chat, which is why you didn't see it there.
Uh,
Uh-oh, Brian wants to know, are we talking about the dating game within the game?
no.
Had some kind of things like that in our quest game. We played the dating game where we played NPCs to
Oh, we
try.
did play a dating game.
Gonna...
Oh my god, yeah. Yeah. I that is great because we talked about doing it. I forget who pitched the idea of doing like I don't know if you guys remember the old match game. And it was like you have like three bachelors or bachelorettes, and then you have the one person there that just asks them questions and then picks one. And so we did it for a king, right? It was the king was looking for someone to marry, looking for a queen, and I don't know if it was Robin or Steven that pitched the idea of doing this in order to appease the king or whatever. But I must admit, I believe it was my idea for us the players, instead of playing our characters, to play the contestants in the game. Where you guys were all contestants in the game. I think I played my character as the MC to the game. And then Doug was primarily, obviously the GM, so running everybody, but then he was primarily running the king.
Right.
That was a lot of fun.
I thought it was rather ridiculous and amusing. It's something different and allows you to, yet again, do the scenario where you get to honestly, do something that you might not have been prepared for or even had a concept that this was going to happen. But like, nope, this is where we're going. We're going from food-based spacefaring adventurers to now we're playing a dating game and we get to play these, wonky nobles to see who's going to marry the queen. Sure.
It's kind of funny that Brian Smith just like, I feel like that was offhand comment. Are we talking about the dating game within the game? And I was like, wait a minute, we did that.
Well, I have to say, like, there have been, a lot of things that we've done, over the course of the years. I mean, at first my brain, went to the, your character in my first game, who maybe it wasn't so much as dating, but like you had a
courtship
ritual that you had to kind of like prove your not your love but your worth to the clan. So you had to like make something, you had to fight her, and like I think there was another step I'm not just not remembering.
Yeah, I don't feel like dwarves love each other. It's all about like it's all arranged marriages and agreements and keeping to one's word and duty and honor, because that character in particular was really all about trying to do things to either create a legacy for his hold or prop up his hold, and so a lot of that stuff was all about that. And like it's funny you mentioned dating because we don't really do romance per se in our games. Like we've added more in the last few years, but it's always like we're always very light touch with it, off camera, out of scene. where everything that kind of happens. Where I know some people like to role play that stuff. That's just not really our group.
Yeah,
Maybe with
it's
Dr. Kurt. I mean, I'm not going to land a doctor in real life. I might as well land one in the fantasy world.
well, I mean, we've had a little bit of like flirt kind of stuff, and like I had kind of brought this up that in one of the games, some years ago, Ryan's character, flirted with me, and I was just completely oblivious to it, and it was
Yeah,
great.
yeah, yeah.
Um, you know, and I'm not, bothered by any of that kind of stuff. I just didn't pick up on it.
Next is dwarven. Dwarves definitely love each other. Dwarves love is just rough like sandpaper, hard like stone.
Well, I mean, everyone gets to do it, differently. And I'm not saying anything, to say that there are not dwarves that have, love in their relationships or what have you. But like so far, what we've tended to have happen with the games that we've played is it's been like, how can you strengthen the clan? How can you improve? Are you a worthy suitor? Um, yeah, and
Well, I mean, we play a game that's based off of medieval fantasy, right? Well, that's what most marriages were, right? It was just a way to strengthen ties and to form strategic alliances. So that's oh my god, you're gonna make me choke, Dankin. So it makes sense. It would make sense that for it to work that way, at least part of the time in the games. Roll
so
con save for dwarf love. That's too good.
all right. So, did we want to kind of get into any of the games in a little bit more in depth within taking chances? Do we want to kind of like, wander back through some of the games to see, what kind of games we've done? Do we want to kind of make up a game here on the spot and, see if maybe that gets put into a blog post? What do you want to do here, Dave? We got 23 minutes left.
Well, so one of the games is in there. I created for a haunted inn, and it's kind of like that's like the whole thing. People go there for the aesthetic. Like it has a ghost band that plays, and there's always a game of I was just looking at it, and I made the game, so I should know what it's called, right? Uh, there's always a game going on where the dealer at the table is a skeleton, but he's only the upper torso of a skeleton. He doesn't have any legs, and it involves 3d6 and 2d10. And the game is Rolling Bones. So if you roll all 5 dice and the d10s come up with ones, then you got eyes. If your d6s come up all sixes, that's a full grin. And if you get the eyes and the grin, then you got a full skull. And kind of like in that order is how they're weighted. Otherwise, you just tally up the numbers to figure out who wins the hand. And then the pot is called the graveyard. And if there's a tie, the graveyard just carries over to the next hand, so it kind of keeps growing. It's like Park Place and Monopoly. So that I think I originally came up for that in a newsletter. Um,
Okay.
and I did the game in the inn, and then we kind of expanded on that stuff and added it to that particular product. And then then also like there's a couple of like specialty drinks that you can get at the inn as well, and most of them require Constitution saving throws. And it's not so much that you just get drunk, but you might get drunk and weird stuff might happen. But you kind of got me thinking earlier when you're talking about the goats. Yeah,
Hmm.
if you came in late, folks, you missed the whole goat discussion and how like what it actually made me think about is a lot of times when we think about playing games in to incorporate into our sessions, we think of more like, oh, what would you be doing in a gambling hall? I feel like, as
Mm-hmm.
opposed to like, well, what about more like festival style games or farm games? Um, or like if you were to have like a county fair type thing where chasing a greased pig might be a game that the players can take part in. But I think the way to win that is really to just throw a portable hole in front of the pig.
Yes, but what if you don't have a portable hole?
SOL.
So like there's definitely ways to do like your typical games of chance. Uh, but I mean like you could have like mage games. So like you could literally have an orb that floats and it's all about concentration, intelligence kind of stuff.
Well, you're just totally ripping off the Dresden Files,
Well,
and I'm
yeah,
sure it's not the first place it appeared either.
that is the inspiration, for it. So I would have like it's a prop, but it's just an orb that has to cross a line as opposed to like a living aspect of death that can kill your opponent if get to touch them.
Oh my God, Brian Smith Connect 4 with Stone Giants. Of course they have. Or oh my God, Cornhole, but for Stone Giants. Accidentally wipe out the village next door. Park says Mage Hand arm wrestling. Use intelligence, wisdom, or charisma checks instead of stuff. I was going to mention that one because I have not seen a lot of Acquisitions Inc. But the one session I did watch, they did have Mage Hand arm wrestling, and I thought that was awesome. Thaco the clown.
Fireball could help the grease pig as well.
Yeah, and then everyone gets to eat as well, but then you might have some angry farmers,
Well, I
especially
mean,
if it's
unless
their prized pig.
I mean, unless that's the intent is to catch the pig and eat it. I mean,
Oh my God, Bryce with emptying the board rains boulders down on the local town.
oh
That's the whole
god.
adventure, right? You have to solve it. It's like, why is this avalanche of boulders keep happening? And it turns out the Stone Giants have been just playing Connect 4. Oh, Brian Smith bringing out an oldie but goodie. Maybe
That's
something like Etherball.
that's going back quite a ways. It's a number of years old.
Brian Smith, I'm still down to watch and support an Etherball show. So we played a game of Open Legend, and we had the Patreons vote on what genre to play. And like the top three were like Eldritch Horror, Fantasy, and was it Espionage?
I think so.
Um, so we from that we came up with there was these 13 flying cities. Maybe it was steampunk. I don't know, but 13 flying cities, and we took a bunch of the results and just mashed them together, and it was very like steampunk ish, but instead of steam, everything ran off of ether, which is just like another way of saying magic. And the magic users in this particular setting is like it's very dangerous just to wield magic. So they also got like they score that involved magic, but they had a score that was their corruption. But anyway, like we decided like all these cities were isolated from each other and didn't really interact except for to play this game called Etherball. And it is somewhere between like rugby and Quidditch, right? So I think we were like this close for the whole campaign just being about Etherball because we spent a lot of time discussing it, figuring out how it interacts and what the significance is. Like we decided things like a lot of the political moves are made at these Etherball games because it's one of the times where people from different cities can kind of connect and interact with each other without the normal hostilities. So it worked out really good. And also we've had other games within our games. Like I introduced Rat Ball into one of our
Oh,
games.
Oh,
and the the players needed to move through a kobold territory, and the kobolds were like, "Well, we can let you move through our territory if you help us with a problem." And they're like, "Well, okay, what's your problem?" And they're like, I think the players are expecting some like fetch quest or something, clear out a monster. They're like, "Well, we decide what kobold tribe's in charge by playing rat ball, and we always lose to whatever the other team was, because they had the ultimate trump card, which was, basically, rat ball is basically lacrosse with a bunch of rats sewn together as the ball. And the other team, the reason why they were winning, they would always win, is their champion was a really fat ogre that took up most of the net, so that he was really hard to score on just by standing there. So they just kept him chained to the other side. So and also there's obstacles on the course as well, of course,
of course.
and the rules are kind of like the pirates' laws. So I thought it seemed like you guys had fun with that.
Oh, rat ball was absolutely awesome. I am saddened that I did not remember to mention rat ball because it was really, I think some of these things that we kind of talked about that haven't didn't make it into taking chances. Maybe we need to start pull those things together and make assemble another taking chances, and kind of get that going. Incorporate some generic rules for how to add some other things, and maybe take that goat herding and have some fun with that too. Put some farm games and other stuff. I think it could be a lot of fun.
Thaco the Clown, if you're not winning, you're not cheating hard enough. That saying sounds very familiar to me.
The one I know is if you're not cheating, you're not trying.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Wordle, but the word triggers power word kill. Not a fun game, maybe a trap. Haha. Well, you know what? You could do word puzzles like that and word games like that, I guess instead of success triggering the trap, maybe failures do instead. So there's the danger of blowing themselves up, which almost happened this weekend. Ted, are you still there? You look frozen. Ted might be frozen. Ted is now a JPEG. I've cast time stop on him. So this weekend, not necessarily a game, but your power word kill trap stuff got me thinking, uh, Brian, because one of Ted's old mentor, creator, tormentor, I don't know what you want to call him, has been kind of following and harassing the party a little bit, and now the party's like, a little worried about that. Not sure what's going on here, and we would definitely like to know how this guy's doing this. So they gave Ted's character a body search and discovered he had a rune stone embedded in him, so they had to surgically remove it. But removing it did cause it to detonate, and the antics and fun ensued from there. So I'm not sure what's going on with Ted and his interwebs tonight. You got any questions? Feel free to drop them in the chat, and I will get to them while we're waiting for Ted to come back. If Ted's going to come back, he might be just having issues with his internet. So it's funny, we came in with the idea of talking about games within games tonight, and a lot of the I memorized explosive runes this morning. Boom. For sure. A lot of the stuff we kind of talked about is kind of funny because I had forgot about it. Like, we've been playing for so long and have worked so much of this stuff in our games. Like the dating game that just kind of came up randomly, or rat ball, which at this point that would have happened like I don't know, probably like 5 years ago or so. Um, Dankin, you got a question. So, how much influence do you allow the players to dictate in this to the story in your games? I would say I give them like 100%. Like I may come up with some ideas and throw some stuff out there, but ultimately I tend to build off of what my players do in my games, and not to. I don't really get too vested in whatever story I came up with. Now I will say like the way we tend to put our games together now is, by having a session zero, the GM will pitch a handful of game ideas. Generally like 3, 4 ideas. The players pick one, and before we go into session zero, and then in session zero we start fleshing out what we're going to do in that game. So that goes a long way towards me not having to worry about putting stuff out that my players aren't interested in, because we've already started a dialogue. We've already decided what type of game we're going to play, and we've already looked at how they want to interact with that game via their characters.
And if somebody were to toss out a like, hey, none of these things are really, you know, do you have any other ideas? So like, I usually just say, hey, here are some ideas that I came up with that I'm interested in running, but there's always that caveat, or pitch me, give me some kind of idea as to what might be of an interest to you. Yes, I apologize. I don't know what happened with my internet, but I just kind of like crapped out for a moment, and you guys either had nothing or a static or whatever.
You were
But
a JPEG.
I was a JPEG. I'm sorry, but it was just a process that we want to kind of collab, and the more information you give to the DM, the more as a player, the more they're going to be able to incorporate that kind of stuff. With the game that Dave is currently running right now, I feel like two of the characters have put forth, or two of the players put forth some information about their characters, about backstory and connectivity, and now all of a sudden, like, those kind of things are really seeming to be the focus. Now I don't know whether that means the other players haven't done so, or we're just focused on these two for now and we'll move on to them at some point in time. uh, but there's been many times where Dave has thrown out plot hook, plot hook, plot hook. We just don't fight because like we didn't notice or we weren't interested. So it's just like, all right, let's go on to the next one. And it's amusing sometimes, the conversations that happen afterwards. It's like, it was like, are you guys paying attention, or am I just throwing out crap tonight?
So Brian Smith had mentioned like it's a good way to run a scavenger hunt campaign. One, it could very easily be the whole campaign, because literally every component of the scavenger hunt could be its own quest.
Mm-hmm.
Or if you're just talking about incorporating it into a campaign, it could be again a series of quests, or it could be as simple as a skill, a really big skill challenge, depending on how involved you want it to be.
All right, so Nexus says level ability to adapt to damage types over time, resistance first, then immunity. Um, so like typically like that kind of stuff comes from class or from a magic item. So I don't know specifically like what source you're talking about, getting this. Like I wouldn't want to make a feat that gives you immunity to a type of damage. Um, but
Well, most of the stuff is as it exists in 5e. Generally, it either gives you a resistance, or it gives you immunity, or it gives you nothing. Right? Like
right.
there's no stacking, there's no elevation. Now, I will say some of the magic items in the Mage Forge are definitely built that way. To like, oh, if you have resistance to cold, now you have immunity. I thought I saw some questions. Brian Smith, I'm going to hit my 6th level party with a dragon fight. while they're cruising through a storm in an airship. Eberron, any badass ideas I should work in a 6th level party? Huh.
Well, I mean, it could be doing like a young adult.
Yeah.
That's definitely, within reason. I mean, don't tell the kids, but I mean, I've got a dragon fight that I'm preparing them for because I got a cool mini that I want to use, and I'm like, well, I think I can build them up to this part eventually. Um, and it's a way of giving them some decent treasure and whatnot to work in some cool story stuff that I've got in the works. But if you're talking about flying, my first go-to is flying. That means strafing runs. They'll have a chance to hit them with range stuff, but it's going to do a whole bunch of damage as it flies by, and you know that can cause all kinds of problems, whether it be to the airship or to the people with weapons or people.
Well, an adult would definitely be a bit much. What's young dragon look like? So, I guess that kind of works, especially if you're using it the way you're talking about. So I'm seeing challenge ratings. It's like 6 to 10ish, depending on where you go. Um, yeah, if you're using a dragon, I definitely like strafing runs just because you want even if they like never really completely fight the dragon, you can even do like a chase scene with them as well.
Yeah, if you're talking about a storm, like you could use a nice blue because it wouldn't care about the lightning.
Yeah, and also dragon senses are much better, so like they might not even know the dragon's there until the dragon is on top of them or within range of their blind sight. So if you're using a storm and you really want like stormy conditions, you are talking about them having to get within 30 feet, which is also good because then that gives the players time a chance to do something. At least their spellcasters or their ranged combatants.
Mm-hmm.
Those that aren't, it's going to be a little bit more annoying for them. Um, you know, the ship was probably going to take damage with every run it makes on them. Dragons are pretty fast with an 80 movement. So I guess it just depends too on how fast of an airship you've got. But ultimately too, it depends on like there's a lot of cool stuff you could do with it. But what are you trying to achieve? Do you want it to just be a fight and be a cool fight? Do you want to have a cool chase scene where either they're chasing the dragon or the dragon's chasing them? How do you want to use cloud cover, right? Is that something they're going to be able to do where they can drop in and out of it to try and break line of sight with the dragon? Again, dragon's got blind sight, so if it gets within 30 feet, it can detect them. But yeah, it's still pretty close. And if if going into the cloud cover at least gives them some kind of cover advantage, do they then risk the lightning from the storm? You coming up with like, on initiative 20, this, something happens with the storm. These are always you could kind of handle it. Depending on what your party composition is. Is there, a druid or a ranger that can just summon a bunch of like birds or something to try and harass and harry the dragon with? I feel like you got some options. And also like one of my big concerns would be like, do I have melee combatants that are in the party? Will they have things that they can do, or will they be standing around twiddling their thumbs? So if currently there isn't things for them to do, maybe you should think about, is there siege equipment on the ship or something that they could use against the dragon, as kind of like a default. If you don't, in case they don't think of something, players, who knows what they're gonna think of. Like the wizard might cast jump on the barbarian, and like he might try and jump on the dragon, even though they're a couple miles in the air.
Yep. I think you pointed it out correctly. Is what is the purpose of the encounter? Um,
Yeah.
you know, Is it to challenge the players? Is it, to hasten the flight of the airship? Is it to defeat the dragon? Is it, oh, I just wanted to throw an interesting combat and do something different? So figure out from what perspective you're approaching this so that, how to build that specific, process. And then from there, move on.
Yeah, like I mean, maybe how big is the airship? Is it something? Can they fly into a canyon with it and kind of like try and lose the dragon there? Is the ship more maneuverable than the dragon, or is the dragon more maneuverable than the ship? Are there things like that to take into consideration because it might just be cool to do it? Like I would think about like anytime you've ever seen any kind of aerial combat in a movie or read about it in a book or a comic book and think about, is this something I want to try and replicate or can replicate? Can you do like a mass of floating lands where there are like all kinds of rocks and chunks where it would like an asteroid field, but not because it's
Well, like, in Avatar, where they're like, flying the helicopters around all these
uh,
float, that stuff is awesome visual. And, hey, it's a small ship. So, yeah, getting around that kind of debris stuff, putting cover between the ship and the dragon should absolutely be a goal of the actual ship. And, maybe something happens to the actual pilot, and one of the party members has to step in and, control that.
I don't, also too, like even like a small ship, that means like what happens if the dragon lands on the ship, right? As it begins sinking and losing altitude, how big is the dragon compared to the ship, right? Uh, especially like I said, especially if it's a small ship.
Yeah, if it's a small ship, but it's only a young dragon, I doubt it's going to be, big enough to really impact a vessel. But I mean, if
Yeah,
it's
young dragon is
still large.
it's still large, so
But I mean, if you go up to huge, and you've got, oh, there's the ship is big enough that it actually comes equipped with a ballista, and there's some NPCs on board, and it's really meant to, can they defeat an adult dragon? That's going to be, a lot to bring down. But I mean, if you've got a a massive weapon on board that can be used, all right, well then maybe they've got a shot.
yeah. So yeah, so I hopefully that gives you some ideas of things, some things you can do, and also
I
like
know,
you said
make a
you
game out of it.
could make a game out of it. I mean, you said you want them to know that dragons are aware of them and they're involved. So but also like if you wanted it to make it maybe less challenging for the players, use a dragon that's not a blue dragon in the storm, so that the dragon also has to worry about being struck by lightning.
Right.
So can it just be random chance? Maybe like maybe the players, the wizard's really smart and starts timing the lightning strikes and begins trying to anticipate where they're going to be, and they like try and lure the dragon into a lightning strike. So I feel like there's definitely some things you could play with it on there. But again, to me, like the best thing is just like, all right, what is any cool thing I've ever seen done, in a movie? Yeah, I want to do that.
I would have to agree.
Yeah.
But we are past the hour mark, so I think it's about time to you know
Well, we'll be back tomorrow
this
night
game.
with our final episode of Zoo Mafia RPG, The Gods Willing. And then we'll be back here on Friday afternoon, 12 p.m. Eastern Time, with the folks from ArcadeCon, RPG Academy. So that should be a blast as well. So until next time, stay nerdy.
Stay nerdy.